All right, let's talk about something that's incredibly important but often overlooked: the subtle, quiet signs of colon cancer. This is a disease that's so preventable if you catch it early, but it can be a real battle if you don't. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what to look for, because honestly, when it comes to this, timing is everything.
And we need to talk about this now, because the reality of colon cancer today is pretty sobering. It's becoming an urgent threat, especially for younger people who probably think this is something they don't have to worry about for decades.
Just look at these numbers. I mean, the difference is night and day. If you find colon cancer at an early stage, the 5-year survival rate is a whopping 91%. But if you wait until it's late stage, after it's already spread, that number just plummets to 13%. This slide right here is the entire reason we're having this conversation. It shows you just how critical timing really is.
And if you're under 50, this is the statistic that should really make you pause. According to the National Cancer Institute, for people between 20 and 49, colon cancer is now the #1 cause of cancer death. Let that sink in. This is not just an older person's disease anymore, not by a long shot.
And you can see the trend right here. The number of cases in people under 55 has literally doubled in recent decades. The entire landscape of this disease is shifting right under our feet, and our awareness needs to shift with it, fast.
So what are we actually talking about here? Well, colon cancer starts in your large intestine, and it usually doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It typically begins as a little growth called a polyp. At first, it's harmless, but over time, some of these polyps can morph into cancer. Now, here's the good news. If you find and remove those polyps early, you can stop the cancer before it ever even starts.
Okay, so let's get into the real heart of it, the subtle signs your body might be sending you. These are the whispers and nudges that you absolutely cannot afford to just brush off. First on the list, any kind of persistent change in your bowel habits. And I'm not talking about an off day or two because you ate something weird. I mean chronic diarrhea or constipation that hangs around for more than a few weeks. See, a tumor can irritate the lining of the colon, which can cause diarrhea. Or, on the flip side, it can grow big enough to physically block the path, which, you guessed it, causes constipation. Sometimes it can even be a weird mix of both. Another huge red flag is losing weight when you have no intention of doing so. There are really two ways this happens. First, the tumor can literally just get in the way, making it harder for your body to absorb all the nutrients from your food. And second, and this is kind of sneaky, the cancer can actually hijack your body's resources. It releases substances that tell your body, hey, send those nutrients over here to feed its own growth.
Okay, this next one is one of the classic signs, seeing blood in your stool. Now, it's true, a lot of people see this and immediately think, oh, it's just hemorrhoids. And yeah, a lot of the time it is, but you can't just assume. The bottom line is you can't afford to be wrong. So if you ever see blood, whether it's in the toilet or just on the toilet paper, you have to get it checked out. No exceptions.
And you know, it's not always bright red blood. If you see stools that are dark, black, or kind of tarry, that can also be a sign of bleeding. Usually that points to something higher up, like in the stomach, but it can also come from the right side of the colon. So it's definitely another one of those things that needs to be investigated.
Now pay close attention to this one. A tumor in the colon can cause this really slow chronic bleed, a bleed so small you wouldn't even notice it day to day. But over time, that tiny loss of blood adds up, and it can drain your body's iron stores, leading to iron deficiency anemia. So if you, especially if you're a man, suddenly get diagnosed with anemia, ruling out colon cancer has to be at the top of the list.
All right, here's a really specific symptom with a fancy name, tenesmus. What it feels like is that nagging, annoying, persistent feeling that you still need to go to the bathroom, even when you literally just went. It happens because a tumor, especially one that's low down in the rectum, is pressing on the bowel wall and basically tricking your brain into thinking there's more to come out. We all get gassy and bloated sometimes, right? It's totally normal. But what's not normal is when it's persistent, when it lasts for weeks and you can't pin it on anything you ate. That could be a sign of something more serious going on.
So why would a tumor cause this? What's the connection?
Well, there are a few things going on. First, a tumor can create a physical blockage, literally trapping gas inside. Second, its presence can mess with the delicate balance of your gut bacteria, causing them to produce way more gas. And finally, if there's a partial blockage, it slows everything down, giving those bacteria extra time to ferment your food, which, you guessed it, creates even more gas. So, we've talked about all these different signs to watch out for, but this next part, this is probably the single most important piece of information in this entire explainer. Because when it comes to colon cancer, the most common sign is often no sign at all.
So, let me just ask you,
What do you think is the #1 most common early sign of this disease?
The answer? Nothing. No sign. That's right. In many cases, colon cancer has to get pretty advanced before it starts causing any of the symptoms we just talked about. And that is exactly why screening, actively looking for it before you feel anything, is the absolute key to survival.
So, what are your options? Well, it mainly boils down to 2 types of tests, a colonoscopy or a stool-based test. The colonoscopy is considered the gold standard. A doctor uses a camera to look at your entire colon, and if they see a polyp, they can just remove it right then and there. The main downside is the prep you have to do beforehand. Then you have the stool-based tests, which are non-invasive kits you can do at home. They're way easier for sure, but they aren't as good at finding polyps, and you have to do them more often.
All right, let's get to the final and most actionable part of all this. Knowing the science is great, but knowing when you personally need to start getting checked is just as important.
Okay, so for the average person with no major risk factors, screening should start no later than age 45, period. But if you have a family history, the rules change. You need to start earlier, either at age 40 or even sooner. The general rule is this: you start screening 10 years before the age your youngest relative was when they were diagnosed. So if your dad was diagnosed at 35, you need to start at 25.
So let's just be crystal clear. These are the big ones that put you in that higher risk category and mean you need to start screening earlier. A family history of colon cancer itself, a family history of those high-risk polyps, or if you have an inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. If any of those apply to you, it's time to have a serious talk with your doctor.
And here's the ultimate takeaway. You can go back and forth on which test is best, and they both have their pros and cons. But all of that matters less than this one simple fact. The most important thing is that you actually get screened. Just doing it, that's what saves lives.
So we'll leave you with this question. You have the information now. You know the signs, you know the risks, you know the timeline. The only question left is, what are you going to do about it? What's your plan for your own health?